Good evening everyone. So today we will take up figures of speech on very popular demand. So I would like to reach out to all of you. I hope we are streaming live on your screens. You can hear me and we will start as soon as you all, yes, send me your lovely greetings. Excellent. So I'm getting an excellent connection on my in my studio and I'm ready to start. So please follow through. And this will be the first figure of speech that we will take up. Alliteration is a common figure of speech, and I hope and I know most of you already know what alliteration is. So I'm going to show you the basic description in brief, as well as an example of the figure of speech that we are discussing. So the basic description, I'm using the word basic because you only are required to identify very prominent figures of speech in statements or in passages that you read. Most of them, if you go through this video twice or thrice, most of them you will know and you will start recognizing. After every discussion, the next session that I take up, which is on Zoom, is the session on practice sheet so that you can apply what you have done. So after this, we will do questions, we will solve a sheet together on Zoom, and hopefully then figures of speech will go down pat. Go down pat is an idiom which means that you will know it well. So now in alliteration, please note the repetition of an initial consonant sound. So the first sound of the consonant SSS or P, this is alliterative. We will take up assonance after this, which will be the repetition of the vowel sound, right? So if alliteration is clear, do say yes in the chat box. Next we come to allusion. Allusion basically means indirect reference to figures or to characters of literary plays or novels. So if I say David was being such a Scrooge, I am alluding to Uncle Scrooge, who is miserly. So when we use a literary character to describe someone, instead of saying miserly, we call that person a Scrooge or a Romeo, Pandora's box. So all these are basically characters whose characteristics is known to everyone, and therefore when I say you are being a Scrooge, now that means we both understand that instead of saying miserly, we are referring to the literary character. Now notice one thing, in figures of speech, it is very important that the two people in conversation know what those meanings are, So figures of speech is dependent on a very big assumption that both people, the one speaking and the one being spoken to, exactly understand the sentiment behind using that fancy thing. So what is basically a figure of speech? A figure of speech is just a device to make language fancier. In order to make it fancy, we use allusions, we use comparisons, we, instead of talking about the exact thing, we use a part of the same. And as a result of this, language appears a little more perky, a little more peppy. But it is based on the assumption that the meanings behind using those devices are clear to us both. So if I compare a person to a horse, that means the person will not get offended because horse can be used as comparison either for power or for speed. So certain animals have it fair in the English speaking world, certain animals do not, even though they may be great. Using animal references or using other references, associations, that is what these poetic devices are. All right. So this is allusion. It is a literary device that basically uses references of literature, common people in literature, or common known figures, and hence you are using this rather than the actual adjective. Anticlimax in a sentence Now, anticlimax in a plot or a story means that you were expecting a great moment, a climactic moment, but nothing happened. The film is building up, the hero is running towards the villain, and you now know that he's going to bash him up or she's going to bash him up. But what happens as a result is the hero reaches the edge of the seat and suddenly the music changes, and maybe the hero or the heroine or the avenger just says, okay, I cannot beat him up. So you were building up for this great fight, but have you noticed this moment in movies, especially in the Marvel adventure movies, which are also very comic other than just being fight? So they just move up and everything is built up, and then suddenly the tone changes. Instead of that gusto tone, they use a comic tone, and it shows the anticlimactic moment. Same is with, but in anticlimax in statements, going from the greater achievement to the smaller insignificant thing. So usually what we write is we go upwards, right? He lost his phone, his car, and his family. So we go upwards. Instead of going upwards, if we go from the greatest to the not so significant, this is anticlimactic in statements. So if you will not get a filmic plot to discuss anticlimax. You will be getting statements. So in the statement, when it goes from most important to least important, that will be anticlimactic. Great. All right. Antiphrasis is basically a poetic device. So we are doing all the antis right now. Not all the aunties, but all the antis. So in antiphrasis, what happens is that a word or phrase is used to mean the opposite of what it normally means. So for example, an attractive long nose. Or if you're saying little man to a fat friend, then it is antiphrasis. So instead of using the correct description, for example, you say that she's so beautiful, look at her long nose. So that is attractive. So, maybe in standard beauty procedures, we probably think long nose is not attractive. I'm not very sure, but whether it's attractive or not attractive, but I think standard it's not regarded to be attractive. So we say it's attractive long nose, right? Or we say cute freckled face. So freckles, usually the white skin people have this disease, not disease, it's just, the freckles, which is the small brown spots. So sometimes people try to get rid of them to get a smooth skin, right? So again, in standardized beauty, it's not regarded to be beautiful, but if you say cute freckled face, that means from the expected notion, we are using the opposite phrase of description. Similarly, I think this is very clear. Get in little man. So to a big person, you say little man, right? So using the opposite, or to a 45 degrees, you use cool 45 degrees. So sometimes it is also meant to be funny. It is also meant to be, sarcastic, or mostly not sarcastic, but hilarious. So using the opposite of what is expected. So at 45 degrees, instead of saying extremely hot, you say cool 45 degrees. It's a cool 45 degrees under the shade. But if you go in the sun, then it burns you. Because between the sun and the shade gives you a lot more relief. So that is antiphrasis. And we have antithesis. When you use two opposite phrases against each other but in a balanced manner, then it is known as antithesis. Many are called but few are chosen. Now these are, many and few are opposite to each other, but together they are sensible, isn't it? Man proposes but God disposes. So man and God are, in a way opposite to each other. One small step for mankind, one giant leap for mankind. Small step, giant leap. But we are using it in a situation where both of them are sensible and they mean something together. And the effect is very, very good. Many are called, few are chosen. One small step for man, a giant leap for mankind. So this is antithesis. If you get it, say yes in the chat box. Using two opposite phrases in a balanced manner is antithetical. Apostrophe, this we have given in our mocks also. Talking to something which is non-existent and a physical form, like earth, right? Or so this is one that this earth is being referred to, and in this is the first example, and this is the second, talking to death. So talking to a non-existent thing as if it were present, as if it's there on the stage with you, or so, oh hush, go away, gentle air. So talking to the air, earth, death, and mainly saying what you are what you are feeling, but addressing something that is not present. Usually an inanimate thing would be apostrophe. Got it? So in alliteration, I was telling you that I'm going to talk about assonance. Now in alliteration, it was basically, the alliterative sound. That means the consonant sound was referred to. In assonance, it is basically the sound of vowels in between. So look at this. Now please note that assonance can be tough to identify because the vowel sound can be produced by two unlike letters. So the that is produced here is with you, and here also the is with you, but here the is with EA. So here the reference has to be the sound, and since the sound does not come because you're not listening to it, you are reading it, you have to identify it. So the trick that I use and I tell students is, if you do not see any other figure of speech and assonance is mentioned, just look for the second or third place of the major keywords. See if they are all vowels and if they produce a similar sound. Because without practice, identifying assonance can be tough, because here the letters are also not the same. Unlike the alliteration, where the consonants are the same and produce the same sound, here the letters are also not the same. So A can be produced by EA, or it can be produced by U, So if assonance is in the options and there is no other apparent figure of speech, I suggest that look for the second or third position of all the major words. If they have vowels and the same sound, then it is assonance, right? So again, see, These two ers are produced by ur. This is produced by ear. Right? I hope you've got it. Cataphora and anaphora. Cataphora and anaphora are going to be discussed together. Cataphora and anaphora means if my sentence has two parts, if I write the pronoun here and then mention the noun here, this is cataphora. But if I said soldier here and wrote he here, it would be anaphora. Right? So if I start with pronoun and then bring in, the pronoun is them here. If I start with pronoun and then bring in the noun, it is cataphora. But if I start with noun and then bring in the pronoun, it will be anaphora. Right? So it's a simple one. Shasmas is something that I am doing extra since, we do not know, they might suddenly give you a typical figure of speech, so might as well just do it. Shasmas means changing. So just remember parallel structure. Parallelism we do in grammar. Just imagine chiasmus to be the opposite of parallelism. Parallelism tells us that if we start with subject here, we should have subject here. This is fine. Now we had adverb, verb, but here we've got verb, adverb. So in the two parts of the sentence divided by and, right, or divided by or, wherever we see parallel structure, if the adverb verb gets interchanged or adjective noun gets interchanged, it is just interchanged for effect, then it is chiasmus. Right? So if you understand this, say yes in the chat box. So look at this adjective and noun, but here noun, verb. Now we have got verb, noun, adjective. So absolutely opposite. Adjective, noun, verb, verb, noun, adjective. So we've got adjective, noun, verb, but after the comma changed. Verb, noun, adjective. This is done just for effect. Have you got it? So just imagine parallel structure, whatever it teaches you, chiasmus is the opposite. Climax is the opposite of what we did in anticlimax. In anticlimax, we start with the most important thing to the most insignificant. Here we start with insignificant and build it up. So climax is how it should be, right? Anticlimax just subverts the climax. And that lends either hilarity or sarcasm or bitterness. So the effect you notice. Climax is the normal thing that you build up and bring in the best thing in the end. Right? So building up. All men, black men, white men, to be guaranteed rights, life, liberty and happiness. So bringing in the most important thing right at the end so that you end with a high note. Got it? Now let's discuss dysphemism and euphemism. Now dysphemism I do not think it should be a part of your paper because dysphemism means using slangs. Using slangs like bullshit or pig or worm food. Worm food means dead. So these are basically slangs. Egghead, snail mail for postal mail. So changing words to, petty adjectives. Euphemism is the opposite. In euphemism, for example, you will not say jail, you will say correction center. It sounds very, very polite and very, very suave. Right? You will not say drugs, you will say substance abuse or restricted substances. But here, you will use slangs for all these things, pot or, other drug language which I don't want to use here, or you're going to use things like egghead, or whatever. So this is mostly a regional phenomenon. These are British slangs. We have our own Hindi slangs for different people, and that too regional slangs, vernacular slangs. So using slang language which is not very respectful, that is dysphemism. So I'm going to skip ellipses, or maybe I can do it quickly. 1 minute, sorry. Ellipses basically means not completing the sentence because we have already used it here. Right? Lacey can do something about the problem, but I do not know what. So instead of saying what she can do about the problem, because the reference to what is given over here, not using that. So just leaving the sentence midway, it's not an incorrect thing to do. Right? She can help with the housework. Nancy can too. Can ke baad we have not repeated housework because it's already given. So it's a simple figure of speech. Right? If you get it, do say yes in the chat box. Euphemism we just did. So that's a list of euphemistic terms. Then we come to exclamation. Exclamation, I hope you know what exclamation is. Anything which ends in an exclamatory mark. Since we are doing such typical figures of speech, one should not forget the most common ones that can be asked. So anything which gives strong emotion and comes up with exclamation mark when you are scared or happy. So do not forget this. Hyperbole. I hope everyone knows what hyperbole is. Hyperbole again means, something where you are exaggerating. The exaggeration can also convey emotion. Either you are upset because you were made to wait for so long. So you say something like, I've been waiting for ages. Or, this bag weighs a ton. So anything which is extremely heavy. So it's a simple figure of speech to catch. Irony. What I have given over here with irony is irony in statements. So you can have situational irony. You can have dramatic irony. Right? Depending on where it is. So dramatic irony would be when, within a play or a movie or the book, the secret, but the characters do not know. So, the hero is trusting her friend, but her friend is ditching the hero. You know it because you know that part of the chapter which describes her ditching. So that's dramatic irony. You know it, but right now the hero doesn't know it. So you're waiting. Okay, he's going to find out, or she's going to find out. That the friend is basically ditching. So that's dramatic irony. Happens many times when you're doing suspense or mysteries or thrillers, right? Situational irony is when, for example, the person who organized the party is the person who could not reach the party, got stuck in a flood or got stuck somewhere. Statement irony is when you show expectation is something, but the outcome is something else. Right? So this is one. This is one example. Sorry about the marks. So this is example 1, this is example 2, and this is example 3. So in a statement, irony is when the opposite and the logical thing are written together. So look at this. The two twins were arguing and one told the other that you are ugly. Right? Or the thieves robbed the police station. So irony in a statement would be the opposites are put together. The opposite of the logical thing is also written over there. And you can see that how can it be possible? Don't confuse it with antiphrases. In antiphrases, the phrases are, the expected thing is conveyed as a non-expected thing. But in irony, the two things are apparently opposites of each other. Do not confuse it with oxymoron. In oxymoron, two opposites are written together to convey a new meaning. Right? So in irony, the opposites remain opposite. No new meaning is entered. In antiphrases, whatever is the expected, for example, a thing for beauty, but it's conveyed in a way that is the opposite to it. Right? In antithesis, two opposite thoughts are put together to make a new meaning. So I hope all that is clear to everyone. So lithotz was asked in AILET, one of the AILET exams. Now in lithotz, what you do is instead of using a direct adjective, you use the opposite adjective with a not. Instead of saying be good, you say don't be wicked. Instead of saying that she, and that too because, for example, she's not very beautiful, does not mean she's ugly, or she's not very thin, does not mean she's fat. But it's not as if she's thin also. Right? So, don't be too wicked does not mean that you are expected to be an angel, but at least limited. So lithotz, you are trying to convey the middle thing that is expected. Metaphor everyone knows, so I'm going to skip it. Comparison, right? I'm going to skip metaplaces. Metonymy. Metonymy, again, where you are using something which is associated as the thing. So if you say, the message is from the crown. So the crown is not giving the message. The crown basically refers to the queen or the royalty, right? Or you say, this instruction is from the CMO, the Chief Minister's office. So the office hasn't issued the instruction. The office stands for something. So in metonymy, I'm using the association as a common method by which I'm referring to that thing, right? Or I say, Hollywood has released a new film. Hollywood is just a generic name for films produced there. But Hollywood hasn't released a new film. Someone else has. But for me, that whole place just is Hollywood. So metonymy is also something which you already know. Onomatopoeia, zoom, vroom, clap, murmur. Writing down sounds as if they are actual words is known as onomatopoeia. Right, so it's simple. Oxymoron I have just discussed. Paradox basically means the opposite of what is expected is happening. Right, it's a paradox where I'm expecting certain things to happen, but its opposite happens. So opposing the expectation, the demand supply curve. If demand is high, price should be high, but price is low. So that would be paradoxical. Personification, I think everyone knows clearly. Personification is when an inanimate object or any animal or plant is said to have or is referred to in such way that it appears as if they have human qualities, loyalty, abstract things. You know, there was a mock question where many of you showed me climbing and all was used, and I think that was not the answer, or that was the answer. So climbing is something which animals can also do. Plants also climb as such, right? So many of you were discussing, you know, these are unpersonified. It was personified, but it wasn't personified. It wasn't personified because these actions are not something which only we do, you know. So if we are using personification, it has to be abstract notions found only in humans. Talking, sensible things, logic, you know, like a mind of our own, feelings. So I hope that is clear. Do say yes in the chat box. Pun is playing on words. There was a passage we gave in one of the mocks, I think 6 or 7 or 5 maybe, which was an entire passage on puns. You know, there was this question on, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So the pun was on the word Edith. 1 minute, sorry children. Oh God. So let me try to find the pen here. So the pun was on the word Edith, right? So we punned on the sound. So there is an idiom, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, because Edith was the wife who opposed to his weight gain, and she said either lose weight or I'm going to leave you. Right? So you can't eat cake and get Edith, because cake will make you fat. So puns are basically when two words have similar sound and we replace one for the other for comic effect. Right? So non-profit and profit. So atheism means not following a religion. That means not having a profit. So saying it's a non-profit, because profit is the word we normally use, right? To keep the Russians in check. So this is the pun on the word check. So puns are usually done for comic effect, where similar sounding words are replaced with each other and the new sentence is hilarious, right? Simile I have already done. You need to have as and like. I hope you know that. So if you do not have as and like, the comparison will be metaphorical, but it will be simile if as and like are used. Synecdoche. Synecdoche is basically a part of speech where we represent, you know, a part for the whole or whole for a part. So if you say England won the World Cup, it's not that entire England won it. England team, maybe football team or cricket team won it, but we are using part for the whole or whole for the part. So instead of saying 100 head of cattle, so it's not only a head. The entire body of the cattle is there, but you say 100 head. All hands on deck does not mean that only your hands have to be on deck. The whole of you have to be on deck, but it's a way of saying. So in synecdoche, when a part of the whole or whole of the part is used to substitute the other, then that would be synecdoche, referring to the whole country. Or so the difference in synecdoche and metonymy would be, metonymy, the replacement is based only on association. It's not on body parts. And in synecdoche, the replacement is based on part of the whole or whole of the part. So instead of saying English team, you just say England, which means English team. So I'm just not using the exact thing, right? Tautology means where both parts of the sentence are saying the same thing. So both the premise and the conclusion are one and the same. They may be worded differently, but no new thing is added to the part. So tautology, for example, mobile phone is a new innovation. So mobile phone and new innovation, both things are the same thing. You are not describing anything more, right? In my point of view, it is completely useless. So what's the point in saying in my point of view? Just say it is completely useless. It's not as if you explained your point of view. So when you are just using extra words to create two parts, premise and conclusion, but both of them are saying the same thing, nothing new is added, that would be tautology. And I know you have done critical reasoning very well, children. So you already understand what tautology is, which is circular reasoning. Transferred epithet. Transferred epithet basically means when we are using the adjective or the adverb with the noun which cannot be said to have the adjective or the adverb. So the couple were unhappy, but we just calling the marriage unhappy, right? I balanced a thoughtful lump of sugar on the teaspoon. So the lump of sugar cannot be thoughtful, right? I was thoughtful, I was lost in my thoughts, right? But I am talking about the lump of sugar, describing it as thoughtful. The farmer plodded along the weary lane. The farmer is tired. The lane is not tired. The whole journey is tired, but I am using this with the lane. So when the adjective is transferred to an unlikely noun, instead of the actual people facing that noun, it is known as transferred epithet, right? So now the time has come for thoughtful gestures, flowers and hearts, if you have understood so far. So I'll wait for those streaming my way. And then begin with the next item here, which is understatement. Okay, those who are writing yes, that's very thoughtless, I must say. I'm sick of yeses. That's all that's there in the chat box. All right, that's lovely. So a lot of emojis are coming my way, nice ones. Thank you so much. Yes, of course, Sarla will give me the cacti only. I've understood why the cacti. Thank you so much, Sarla. Okay. Thank you so much. So, understatement basically means when a serious topic is discussed as if it's nothing, right? So, for example, grave. You know, you're saying it's a fine place. I mean, definitely it's not a fine place, right? But you're referring to it as if it's nothing, you know? And if there is a flood, you just say, yes, it has rained a little. Or if someone asks you, how's the weather in North India, like Lucknow, Delhi, or Chandigarh, and you say, yeah, it's a little hot. So that's an understatement because it's extremely hot, right? So stating, just bringing down the seriousness of a situation as if it's nothing is known as an understatement, right? So for something which was very intense, you say, yeah, it was interesting. You know, so stating, bringing down the seriousness of something would be an understatement, can be used to either not convey the correct feeling or can be used to just lend, you know, comic sense. So many of these things can only be used for comic sense as such. All right, so I'm skipping hypophora for the time being. And as promised, children, we are going to take up the exercise questions in the Zoom class where I will be sharing the sheet and discussing the answers. Right? So I hope you liked the session today and that it was relevant for all of you. And now that you will be able to handle most of these common figures of speech. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you so much for all the love that you have shared here on the screen. I will be scheduling the Zoom class next week now. So 1 week for you to revise this and redo this video so that you learn it up. The best way to learn figures of speech is just look at this video with all the notes and all. So twice or thrice that will do the job. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. A great evening ahead.